Hello, and a very warm welcome to what we're reading this October. I'm Laura.
And I'm Rebecca.
And this is our virtual book club where we talk about nonfiction books that we pick, why we pick them, and how we're going to apply what we learn to our work as educators and entrepreneurs in education. So, what did we pick this month?
This month we've got 3 titles for you. Number 1, Go Put Your Strengths to Work by Marcus Buckingham. Number 2, The Creative Habit, Learn It and Use It for Life by Twyla Tharp. And number 3, The Extended Mind, The Power of Thinking Outside the Brain by Annie Murphy Paul. Grab a cup of coffee and find out what we learned and which books will be taking pride of place on our bookshelves. Laura, which one do you want to talk about first?
I think let's start with the one that's been sat on my shelf for quite a while. This is the Go Put Your Strengths to Work by Marcus Buckingham. And to say it's been on my shelf for a while is, I think, putting it lightly. I actually bought this quite a few years ago when I was working in a corporate role, and strengths was very much part of like the training and the conversations that were going on in like appraisals and, you know, just ongoing kind of staff room chats. So that's what kind of compelled me to purchase it. But then it sat on my shelf for a very long time. So I'm really grateful that we've created this club so I can actually start power through all the books that I have on my shelf and think about how I can apply it to my learning.
I'm here for you. We've got your back.
What did you think of this book? Do you want to go first in kind of sharing your initial takeaways?
Oh, I'm not certain I should be first on this one, Laura. It was a huge miss for me. I thought that when I was working in a nonprofit and corporate, this probably would have been a really good read for me. It does really focus on working within an environment, but it's also very westernized and focused on individual mentality rather than a collective mentality. So for us who do a lot of work with English language learners, I found that a little bit difficult to reconcile.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I certainly felt that this would be more relevant in my corporate career, working, you know, up the corporate ladder, so to speak, but less so applicable to my work now as a business owner. I agree with you that it had that whole kind of individualistic take, the idea that you can position yourself and not really think about the team and what strengths may be needed on the team when thinking about the dynamics and what you're working on. So that really did come through quite strongly. And I wonder how well and how transferable this would be to other more kind of collective mindset cultures where working more cohesively is a priority and just part of the culture there.
Absolutely. In one of my former roles, I was a department head in a nonprofit, and I worked closely with an HR director who was always telling me, Rebecca, you can't design your job descriptions around the people you have hired. You have to define the job and then hire. And I never really understood that fully until I read this book and realized how difficult it would be to refill a position when somebody leaves if you have
Mm-hmm.
tailored it exactly to their strengths. So I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Linda, if you're out there, I get it now.
A few years later and getting it, but the penny drops now. I mean, not to kind of this book completely. There were some things I did like about it, like the key thing where he mentions about strengths being something that we actively explore rather than just sit with and just try and pull out of the sky. And thinking about our strengths as not necessarily just things that we're good at, but things that we need to do, feel like a compelled energy towards and intuitively do. And I thought that was really helpful. And there's some really good like acronyms in there to help you to remember and reflect on your strengths. There is indeed a lot of reflective tools and integration of media in this, which I thought was really interesting as far as the book goes. And I think if I was going to take one thing away from it is the I feel strong when, that statement that he gives, and it gets you to kind of form yourself. And that was quite powerful in just writing down those things and thinking about how I spend my time in my work and whether I'm spending time in the areas that energize me rather than drain me. So not all a loss, but maybe more applicable to other contexts rather than the context I work with now.
Right. I agree. The I feel strong when is very applicable to us as educator entrepreneurs. We do need to know when to do something in our business ourselves and when to outsource. So that's a good observation.
Mm. Shall we move on to the second book that we
Let's
picked?
do it.
So this one was Twyla Tharp's The Creative Habit, this one here. This was your pick, and you did the hybrid option, right? So you listened and read at the same time?
Yes, I bought the audiobook and I also bought the digital book.
What was your reason for picking this one?
I'm a member of a few different mastermind groups, and every single one that I participate in has this book is at the top of the reading list for several people in the group. So it's been recommended to me probably more than a dozen times. And
Mm.
when smart people tell me to read things, I try to listen. So thanks for holding me accountable.
I really love this book. I don't know about you, but there were just so many really practical things I can try out to kind of bring more creativity, energize myself with creative ideas, and also get out of the rut. There's a whole chapter on getting out of a rut, and I thought that was really comforting to know that somebody like Twyla, who's, if I understand, she's a very accomplished choreographer, but she talks about it openly about ruts and how she gets out of it. And I thought that was quite reassuring because it can feel quite lonely when you're working and running your own business and you do hit brick wall kind of in terms of the thinking and where to go and how to kind of problem solve. But she suggests some really great ways in which you can do it by taking inspiration from other sources that are outside of your zone of expertise and taking energy and ideas from there to kind of think more dynamically about problems or challenges or projects you're working on.
I really appreciated that as well. I loved the narrative style of this book. I think of
Me too.
everything on the list, it was the easiest to read.
Yeah.
I felt like I was interacting with her directly. And as you said, the book has quite a few exercises to spark creativity, and some of them probably will fit each person better than others, but I have found them really helpful to play around with. She really reinforces the idea that creativity is like a muscle that we build. It's not sort of a divine inspiration that falls
Yeah.
onto us. My
Really,
favorite thing is the box. How
I
did
was
you like
gonna
the box?
say, I was gonna say, I love the box. I love the box. Could you share what the box is for people listening? Because I love that idea.
This made me think of the sort of current movement and interest in personal knowledge management, or PKM, saving up your bits and bobs from everywhere that you get inspiration, and sort of categorizing them to use in future work. So whenever Twyla starts a project, or even if she thinks it's something she might want to look into in the future, she starts a box and she puts research and every little bit that she finds into the box to go back through as like a treasure trove of inspirations you can pull from when you're ready to really dive into a project.
You know, I really love this idea as well because I've been brainstorming for my content that I write for my business using an Excel sheet, and it hasn't been working and I couldn't work out why. But it's just not that exciting, nor is it going to inspire me that much going back to an Excel sheet, looking at notes I've written and then thinking, what on earth did I mean by that? It doesn't kind of propel me into my writing or video creation. So this idea that I can have a box or multiple boxes that I can put in ideas, whether it's props or keywords or something that sparks an idea, is kind of, it reminds me of the dressing up box I had as a child, like that imaginary trove that you can open up and how it can lead to exploring many different avenues and ideas and worlds within it. So I really can't wait to try out that idea.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting way to see connections between ideas that might not necessarily be immediately connected on the surface.
Mm. Shall we move on to the third and final book? Obviously, we love this one, so this could be a good contender for our best pick on the shelf. But we've got one more to talk about, and that's The Extended Mind, The Power of Thinking Outside the Brain by Annie Murphy-Paul. Again, this was one of your picks, Rebecca. Would you like to share why you chose this one?
Oh my goodness, I'm so pleased with this. I don't think I can say enough about it. I've been doing a lot of writing and presenting over about the last 12 to 18 months about cognitive load theory and what it means for doing professional development for teachers, and also what it means for teachers who are in the classroom. And I came across a little excerpt from this book in some other research that I was doing on cognitive load, and it was one of those things where it was a little bit love at first sight with the excerpt. You know, for us people who love to buy books, I had to have it the moment I saw it.
I'm so glad you did pick it. I felt that this was I mean, it's a really powerful book. I listened to it and it's quite a tomb of a book. Even though I'm listening, it was 11 hours. It's, an hour per chapter of content. And it really challenged some of my beliefs as an educator and as an entrepreneur, and how we learn and how I learn and how I should go about facilitating things. I think it's one of the most significant books I've read in a long time. That's had such a massive impact on how I approach learning, which is quite a big thing to say in our first book club session. But I think this could be one that really stays the length of time and continues to have a positive ripple effect.
I agree. This was this was mind altering for me. I think it had a huge impact, and it made me realize some things that I'm doing that I could be doing more impactfully if I used alternative methods. For example, one of the things that is covered in the book is how body language and gestures impact learning. And I was really interested in what that means. She talks a lot about research about students moving around the classroom to understand concepts, both adults and kids, and also how much more vocabulary somebody can remember if it's accompanied by gesture. And I'm not typically animated in that way in my presentations because I'm very nervous and awkward. So it made me really think about how I could intentionally use that to help with learning.
Yeah, that aspect of movement that she incorporates, and also that intuition, which I thought was really interesting. But I don't know if you recall that first chapter where she talks about intuition, that connection between what you're thinking and your kind of gut instinct. And she did this whole reference to this research where people can tell what their heart rate is at. And people who have a more accurate read of their heart rate tend to be more in tune with their body and how they're feeling, and be able to make better judgments, because the body responds almost before the mind does. And she also then gave examples of how traders and people who work in the stock exchange are often referring to their gut instinct to inform their decision making. And then, you know what, I was walking to the gym and I was like, you know what, I'm going to try and guess my heart rate. I'm going to see if I'm like in tune. I was way out. I was like 45 beats out. Like, so I wonder what hope there is for me.
Maybe it's a practice you can build.
I hope so. I really hope so. But that was one thing you mentioned, the gestures, and there was that part of gestures being online as well. Like she mentioned how the absence of gestures, because obviously the framing we have here, you can't see our hands, you can only see our shoulders, actually increases the cognitive load for people. And in fact, we want to be encouraging people to gesture more. For example, on one hand. On the other hand, like she used that as an example of incorporating gestures to help guide thinking and to facilitate brainstorming, which, she's incorporated lots of examples in there. It's a big book. I'm gonna have to read it again, that's for sure. There's so much in there, and there's so much research that goes into it, because I think ultimately she knows how much she's going to have to push in order to persuade people and to help them unlearn and make changes. And I think she's done a terrific job.
I agree. This book is incredibly well researched, and the citations are so interesting that I could make my reading list for the next year just by going back
Yeah.
through them. I did think it was really interesting that we read this at the same time as The Creative Habit, because I felt like a lot of the things that Annie Murphy Paul said about intuition, gestures, and body language were really tied to what Twyla Tharp was talking about with muscle memory and the things
Mm.
that your body knows as being a part of your professional skill set.
Yeah, it really does make sense that we read them together, and I'm really glad we did. I feel like the extended mind is the why, and then Twyla Tharp's was very much the how, very practical things I can actually do, and it was very relatable to my own practice.
Agreed.
So with that, do you feel you can pick which one's going to take pride of place on your bookshelf?
Ooh, I'm keeping The Creative Habit because I loved it, but I'm going to read The Extended Mind again at least one more time. So, Pride of Place. How about you?
It's really difficult to pick between the two. But I think in terms of what I need now and things I can, put into practice quite quickly, I'm going to go for Twyla Tharp's The Creative Habit, because there's so much in there that can help really propel me forward, keep me energized, and think really more creatively in my work as I create content and facilitate sessions for, new podcasters and video creators. So yeah, this is the
I
one.
love it. And I love that we're holding each other accountable to finally read all of this stuff off our bookshelves. So, what should we read next?
Well, we picked three. One of them was because I made an impulsive purchase. We're trying to work through our reading list on our shelves, but I still keep on buying books. I have a problem. But as you can see on screen there, here are the books we've picked. We've got Get Together, How to Build a Community with Your People, The Coming Wave, and How to Tell a Story. And we're going to be hosting our next virtual book club on the 30th of, thank you very much, the slide just changed there in time for me, the 30th of November, that's 12 p.m. Chicago time, 6 p.m. London, or 7 p.m. Zurich. So you can join us here on LinkedIn or on YouTube.
It's been fun. Thanks, Laura.
It really has. It's been great to read and then share our learning. I think that's really taken things to the next level, to talk about it and think about how we draw those connections. I don't think I would have been able to make such clear connections to my work had it not been for this club. So thank you.
Thank you. Also, I probably wouldn't have read 1,000 pages in a month by myself. So thanks.
Same. All right. Well, thanks everybody who joined us, or for watching this replay. Until next time, happy reading.